Have you ever seen a living person whose muscles have turned to stone? Hannah, an American girl, was diagnosed with stone man disease, and her body joints ossified at a rate of 0.3 millimeters per day, and she was incapacitated at the age of 17. Indonesian man Didi has a wart-like growth of up to 12 kilograms, shaped like a walking dead tree. Ali, an Indian child, had a swelling of 1.5 meters in his lower limbs and was known as the son of an elephant man. According to the latest data from the WHO, there are 274 medical unsolved diseases in the world, with an average diagnosis time of 15 years, and some mortality rates are as high as 30%. What happens to humans when DNA starts to spiral out of control? Today, let's talk about the world's top 10 strange diseases. First, tree man disease. In a remote village on the Indonesian island of Java, 37-year-old Dede struggles to scoop up a spoonful of rice with gauze-wrapped hands. His palms are covered with twisted keratin growths, like intertwined dead branches, and these barks, which weigh more than 6 kilograms, make it physically demanding for even the simplest daily movements. The man, dubbed the tree man by the media, is one of the most severe patients with verrucous epidermal dysplasia known worldwide. The medical name for tree man disease is verrucous epidermal dysplasia, in which patients are born with a mutation in the EVER1 or EVER2 gene that causes the immune system to lose its defenses against the HPV virus. While ordinary people infected with HPV only have common warts, patients like Didi can trigger a frenzied proliferation of skin cells. At the age of 15, a knee abrasion became a turning point in Didi's fate. After the virus invaded from the wound, papillomas began to grow on his limbs, and these diseased tissues spread at an alarming rate, eventually forming keratinized growths that covered his entire body. There are only more than 500 cases of tree disease in the world, and after receiving media attention in 2007, Dede underwent 4 major surgeries and removed more than 12 kilograms of diseased tissue, but the disease is still with him. Within 6 months after surgery, 80% of patients will have a recurrence, and patients will still need to undergo 2 to 3 surgeries per year, even with interferon and vitamin A therapy. To make matters worse, people with the disease are at a higher risk of becoming cancerous. HPV-5 infection can lead to squamous cell carcinoma, and patients need to be screened for skin cancer for life. Second, stone man disease. At the Genetic Testing Center of Singapore's KK Women's and Children's Hospital, 27-year-old Wu Qing got the fate-changing diagnosis. This young woman, who was accidentally found to have a bone abnormality due to a car accident, was finally diagnosed with stone man disease, one of the only 900 cases in the world. After 2 years of traveling to multiple hospitals, her muscles and ligaments are turning into bones at a rate visible to the naked eye, like the victims of Medusa's gaze in Greek mythology, gradually turning into a stone. The medical name for stone disease is fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, UFOP, which is rooted in a mutation in the ACVR1 gene. Normally, BMP proteins are suppressed after embryonic development, but mutations allow them to continue to be hyperactive, converting muscles, tendons, and even ligaments into new bone. The patient's body is cast with a petrification spell. It may start as painless swelling in the neck or shoulders and then spread throughout the body. On X-rays, dendritic high-density opacities appear in the originally soft tissue areas, eventually forming an ectopic bone structure that is connected to the original bone. This ossification process is irreversible and unpredictable, and may be accelerated by minor trauma or inflammation, or even by intramuscular injections, triggering new foci of ossification. The case of the American patient Halish Talik is one of the most brutal stone figures in the history of medicine. After undergoing hip surgery at the age of 15 due to a misdiagnosis, his condition spread like wildfire. His jaw gradually fused and he could not eat. His ribs were completely ossified, causing breathing difficulties, And finally, 90% of his body's joints were locked by new bones. In the last decade of his life, he could only eat through a straw and moved in a wheelchair, but remained conscious until his death from cardiopulmonary failure at the age of 40. However, even when diagnosed, there is a lack of effective interventions for the disease. Patients can only wear custom-made braces to maintain range of motion and use physical therapy to slow the process of stiffness. In August 2023, the US FDA approved the first drug for the treatment of FAP, the first breakthrough in this field in nearly 300 years. This selective retinoic acid receptor agonist reduced the rate of ectopic ossification in patients by 54% by inhibiting BMP signaling. But that hope comes at a high cost. The drug costs up to $24,000 a year and is a lifelong medication. Globally, only the United States, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates have approved their use, and most patients still face the dilemma of having no cure. Third, elephantiasis. In a highland village in Ethiopia, Africa, Aisha, a 25-year-old girl, struggles to move her right leg, which is swollen like a tree trunk. The skin of her feet was covered in cracked scales. Dark red nodules clumped between her toes, and her entire leg was an eerie purple-black color from lymphatic stasis. It's like elephant skin, and that's elephantiasis. Elephantiasis is not a single disease, but a syndrome caused by two distinct causes. The first is lymphatic filariasis, caused by mosquito-borne parasites, which infects more than 120 million people worldwide, and 4% of them develop irreversible limb swelling. Another non-filarial elephantiasis is even more bizarre, in which Ethiopians are exposed to red clay with monthorianite and metallic elements for a long time, causing the skin to begin to keratinize and proliferate, and papilloma to spread like coral on the ankles. When the lymphatic system is completely paralyzed, the swelling invades upwards like a flood that bursts its banks, eventually forming elephant legs with a diameter of more than 50 centimeters. What's even more terrifying is that this lesion will last for more than 40 years, until the end of the patient's life. Surgical removal of diseased tissue is also ineffective, and there have been 7 amputations in Bangladesh that have not been able to stop the spread of the disease. Even more serious is the vicious cycle of complications. Swollen limbs are ulcerated by lymphatic extravasation, and Staphylococcus aureus takes advantage of the weakness to cause sepsis. Data show that the mortality rate of people with elephantiasis is 6 times higher than that of healthy people, and 11 out of every 100 patients commit suicide due to depression. In Ethiopia, the disease kills 170,000 people every year, and patients lose 45% of their ability to work due to disability, trapped in a cycle of poverty due to illness. In some tribes, elephantiasis sufferers are considered cursed. They were forced to live alone outside the village, wrapped in tree bark, and denied the right to marry. Today, there are still outbreaks of elephantiasis in 80 countries around the world, and 3,000 children are at risk in Ethiopia alone. Fourth, progeria. This rare disease, which occurs only in 1 in 4 million newborns, causes the body to age at a rate of August 10th times, and the average life expectancy is only 13 years. In other words, when children of the same age are still babbling, they are already suffering from geriatric diseases such as arteriosclerosis and osteoporosis. Babies are often born like normal babies, but growth begins to slow markedly after 1 year of age. When the South African girl Beandri died at the age of 19, she weighed only 12 kilograms and was less than 1 meter tall. Their facial features gradually take on the appearance of little old men. A relatively large head circumference, prominent eyeballs, a thin chin, and paper-thin skin covered with age spots. In 2017, an 11-year-old boy in India, Shirashi, was reported by the media that he was completely bald and his joints were so stiff that he could not walk normally. The root cause of this disease lies in a single mutation in the LMNA gene, which causes an abnormality in the lamin A protein. This protein is like the steel support of the nucleus, and when mutated, the nucleus will be deformed and accelerate cell aging. Globally, only about 200 confirmed cases have been identified. In the laboratory of the University of Tokyo's Faculty of Medicine, researchers are trying to repair mutant genes using CRISPR technology, but clinical application is still far away. Existing treatments can only delay symptoms, statins to control arteriosclerosis, growth hormone supplementation to improve developmental delay, and physical therapy to maintain joint mobility. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first drug for progeria in 2020, which increases the average life expectancy of patients by 5 years, but does not reverse the underlying lesions. Fifth, harlequin ichthyosis. In human genes, when the ABCY12 gene is mutated, the patient's skin will change like fish scales. This is the harlequin ichthyosis, which has a prevalence of 1 in a million. At birth, the child is covered in keratin plaques, up to several millimeters thick, which bind the limbs tightly. In the folds of the skin, dark red fissures sans tissue fluid. Even more suffocating, abnormal growths in the facial skin pull the eyelids and turn outward, exposing a congested conjunctiva. The lips are ripped into an exaggerated O shape. This strange appearance gave them the nickname harlequin ichthyosis. The normal human body's ABCA12 protein is responsible for transporting lipids to the skin's surface to form a protective barrier. However, in the patient's body, this molecular transport system is completely paralyzed, causing the skin to lose its ability to retain water. And the daily loss of water through the body surface is equivalent to 3 times that of the average person. What's more, the stratum corneum hinders the development of sweat glands, and the patient feels like being put in an incubator, and the thermoregulatory system is completely out of order. In areas with poor medical care, more than 80% of children die within the first week of life. The thick skin restricts the expansion of the rib cage, and every breath is compressed. Even if you are lucky enough to survive, the risk of infection that follows is even more terrifying. The 2014 case of an 18-year-old girl reported by the Daily Mail is heartbreaking. 98% of her skin is covered with keratin, and the hair follicles on her head are completely clogged, so she can only rely on a wig to cover it. Since it is impossible to close the eyes, eye ointment must be applied every hour to prevent the cornea from drying out. The knuckles are wrapped in keratin, so even the simplest grasping movements require the help of aids. Current treatments can only stay at the level of symptom relief because scientists have found that the mutation sites of the ABCA2 gene are quite random, and each patient has a unique mutation pattern, which makes targeted therapy extremely difficult. Sixth, blue skin. Deep in the mountains and forests of eastern Kentucky, there was once a family that was unbelievable to the outside world, the Fugate family. The members of this family have a faint blue glow on their skin, just like Avatar. It was not until the 60s of the 20th century that it was discovered that this family suffered from the extremely rare form of blue skin. This is a rare genetic disorder called hereditary methemoglobinemia. Normally, the iron in hemoglobin is in a bivalent form and is responsible for transporting oxygen. But a mutation in the NADH cytochrome B5 reductase gene in the patient causes the iron to be oxidized to a trivalent form to form methemoglobin. This mutant protein loses its oxygen carrying capacity, causing the blood to take on a chocolate color and the mucous membranes of the skin to turn bluish purple due to lack of oxygen. What's even more amazing is that this recessive genetic disease requires both parents to carry the defective gene at the same time. Martin Fugate, the ancestor of the Fugate family, immigrated from France in 1820 and married a local woman, Elizabeth Smith. Due to long-term isolation, there are inbreeding marriages within the family, resulting in the accumulation of defective genes in the offspring. According to statistics, there are more than 40 people with blue skin in 7 generations of the family, the most famous of which is Benjamin Stacy, who was born in 1975 and was born dark purple and did not gradually turn pale blue until he was 6 months old. Despite their unusual skin, the Fugate family members show amazing vitality. They generally have a lifespan of more than 80 years. Medical experts speculate that this may be related to their long-term living at high altitudes. The local oxygen level is only half that of sea level, and the body naturally increases the production of hemoglobin in order to adapt to the environment. And the abnormal hemoglobin in people with blue skin increases the efficiency of oxygen carrying. But even though they live like ordinary people, social prejudice is always with them. In the 19th century, villagers regarded blue skin as a devil's curse, and members of the family were forced to live in seclusion in the mountains. Currently, the treatment of blue skin mainly relies on methylene blue intravenous injection. This drug restores methemoglobin to its normal form, causing a temporary return to skin tone, but the patient needs to take it for life. 7th, werewolf syndrome. In a village in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh, 18-year-old Lalit Patidar is trimming his facial hair in front of a mirror. He has 202 strands of hair growing on every square centimeter of skin, all over his body, which earned him the Guinness World Record for Hades face in 2025. But in fact, what he got was congenital systemic hirsutism, commonly known as werewolf syndrome. In the evolutionary history of mankind, the loss of body hair is an important milestone. About 1.2 million years ago, early Homo sapiens gradually lost their thick hair to adapt to the hot climate of the African savanna. However, in a very small number of individuals, the genes that control the growth of body hair have undergone reverse mutations, resulting in the fetus being unable to complete the normal body hair degeneration process in the mother's body and carrying body hair at birth. For the first time in medieval literature, such werewolves were documented. In 1547, Pedro, a boy from the Canary Islands, was presented to King Henry II of France as an alien, covered in 4 inches of blonde hair, but possessed normal intelligence. After Pedro married a French woman, all 5 children inherited this trait, and the family portrait still hangs in the museum in Innsbruck, Austria. The face, back, and limbs of Suprit Kaur, a Thai girl, are covered with 98% black hair, and even with weekly laser hair removal, the new fluff will regenerate within 48 hours. The Indian man, Rajiv, has 3 generations of his family and has carried this gene, and his genitals are even wrapped in thick hair. There are currently fewer than 50 confirmed cases worldwide, and this rarity makes research progress difficult. 8. Xeroderma pigmentosum. In Fukuoka, Japan, 12-year-old Drina spends her days in complete protection from light. She was wrapped in a white hazmat suit. Her face was covered with a special face shield, and even the lights had to be specially filtered. This scene may seem like something from a science fiction movie, but it is a real-life portrayal of the lives of about 5,000 people with Xeroderma pigmentosum XP around the world. Because as soon as they see the light, they will develop skin cancer. Xeroderma pigmentosum is rooted in defects in DNA repair genes. Normal human cells will activate endonuclease for precise repair after ultraviolet damage, but XP patients have completely failed this repair mechanism due to gene mutations such as XPA and XPC. Like a skyscraper that has lost its maintenance workers, the cracks left by UV rays in the skin cells accumulate and eventually cause cancer. The incidence of this recessive genetic disorder is only 1 in 250,000, but the risk rises dramatically in areas where consanguineous marriages are common. Patients are born with seemingly normal skin, but often begin to develop abnormalities after 6 months of age. The skin becomes red, swollen, blistered, and ulcerated as if it had been poured sulfuric acid on light sun exposure. As they age, dense freckle-like pigmentation develops in exposed areas, and the skin becomes dry and shriveled, like dead leaves that have been drained of moisture. 50% of patients develop skin cancer before the age of 20, and the incidence of basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma is 1,000 times higher than the general population. In addition to skins, XP attacks other systems. About 30% of patients develop neurodegenerative disorders that manifest as mental retardation, epilepsy, and even deafness. At the moment, the medical community is still helpless about XP. Treatment is limited to symptomatic treatment, high-powered sunscreen, SPF 10+, full-body protective clothing, and regular removal of cancerous tissue. But these measures can only delay the disease, not prevent the eventual deterioration. Data shows that about 2/3 of patients die from metastases of skin cancer before the age of 20, and only a handful survive beyond the age of 30. 9th, epidermolysis bullosa. The incidence of this rare disease is only 1 in 2,000 to 1 in 5,000, and it affects about 5,000 people worldwide. Their skin is as fragile as a butterfly's wings, blistering at the slightest touch, revealing a bright red wound. Even more worryingly, this vulnerability can spread to mucous membranes throughout the body. Mouth blisters cause eating to be like swallowing broken glass. Esophageal ulcers make drinking torture, and mucous membranes of the eyes can be damaged, and even blindness. Human skin relies on more than 200 proteins to build a tough structure, and key genes such as LMNA and CoL-A in EB patients are mutated, resulting in the failure of interlayer connections in the skin. Just like the fragile building, the epidermis and the dermis will be separated by a slight external force. Depending on the location of the blisters, there are 4 types of disease. Simple blisters only in the epidermis, junctional blisters deep into the basement membrane, malnutrition types with scarring, and Kindler syndrome with photosensitivity. At present, there is no cure for the disease, and the only way to delay the deterioration is to take care of the wound for a few hours a day. Silica gel dressings to isolate friction, saline cleaning to prevent infection, and painkillers to relieve severe pain when changing dressings. To make matters worse, long-term chronic ulcers can deteriorate into squamous cell carcinoma, and 50% of critically ill patients do not live to be 30 years old. In 2023, the journal Nature reported the world's first skin transplant of genetically modified stem cells, and 80% of the patient's wounds miraculously healed. However, the cost of this treatment is multi-million dollars, and the need to match donors makes it difficult to make it widely available. 10th, hematidrosis. The most intuitive feature of hematidrosis is the excretion of blood or hemoglobin from the body through sweat glands. This phenomenon has long been recorded in the classics of traditional Chinese medicine, and the miraculous prescription describes it as "sweat is like blood" and calls it red sweat. Modern medicine has found through microscopic observation that red blood cell components are indeed present in the patient's sweat, but this blood does not come from skin breakdowns, but is directly mixed with sweat and excreted. Studies have shown that the capillaries surrounding the sweat glands may be abnormally permeable, and when the sympathetic nerves are excited, tiny fissures appear in the walls of the blood vessels, causing blood components to leak into the sweat ducts. What's even more confusing is that this leakage is highly selective. Only some of the sweat glands are abnormal, while the blood vessels in other parts of the body function completely normally. There were no abnormalities in the structure of sweat glands and coagulation function. Modern medicine has found that the patients in 76 cases from the 17th to the 20th centuries often had strong mood swings. According to a recent case published in the Journal of the Canadian Medical Association in 2025, a 21-year-old Italian woman began to bleed regularly from her face and hands after a family accident, with each episode lasting 5 minutes, and her symptoms worsened when she was anxious. This mind-body association implies a complex interaction of the neuroimmune endocrine system, but the specific occurrence path remains unclear.